So in Britain, we have a number of problems that we talk about constantly, including the numbers of people coming into the country. But I think something that we really need to hammer home is the fact that even if we were to close the borders today, we are sitting on a demographic time bomb, and the clock is ticking. Even if we were to close the border right now, due to the way that birth rates are in this country, but by the end of the century, it's likely that white British will become a minority in
By
this country.
2083, we will become 54% first-generation immigrant with current trends, and that doesn't count the second-generation babies, so you will be overwhelmingly a non-Indigenous British country.
Yeah, there you go. And at that rate, this population will have essentially been well on its way to being replaced, and it will not be Britain anymore. That will change the way that this country looks. That will change the lives that our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren get to live, because when it tips over the scales that much, the only solution is what the Spanish managed to achieve. But we are not in a position to be thinking of such things at the moment. Before I go any further, I need to point out that we do have merchandise on the website. This is the Islander 2 merchandise, which is still available, but now only for a limited time, because Islander 3 will be coming out soon. There have been distribution problems with the second one. If you're still having issues getting a hold of your issue of Islander 2, please get in touch with us and we will sort it ourselves, because the distributor was rubbish. But Islander 3 will have a different and better distributor, so hopefully we'll not have those same problems. But make sure to buy this merchandise while it's still available to pay the bills, feed and clothe us, and make sure that Josh does not die naked and destitute at the side of the road.
Please do.
And this is old news at this point, really, but it's been recirculating with a new map to go with it, and visual aids always help because people don't like reading. And that is this, that in 2023, only 56% of births in England were of white British. And here is a helpful map to show you where exactly those places were that had the worst birth rates for white British. London, clearly being an extreme outlier in just how bad it was, with Devon, Cornwall, parts of Wiltshire looking all right.
Southwest.
And the northeast as well. However, even then, 77%, 80%, not high enough, as far as I'm concerned. Some people will tell you that the only way to fix this is through increasing the birth rate of the natives, and I would never ever discourage people from having children, having a family of their own, but that can only go so far, because if we were to begin to try and find some way to culturally encourage native British people to start having more children while maintaining the population breakup that we have right now, what you're essentially getting into is a demographic arms race.
I was going to say, it would be like, the nuclear build-up with the US and the Soviet Union, right? Except I think that our immigrants would be better suited, because the British cultural practice is to have as many children as within your means, and to spend a lot of time cultivating their education and making sure they're well-rounded people. Whereas, having 15 kids on welfare, some of us might do it, but it's not necessarily as enculturated into us as some of our house guests.
Well, not just that. Of course, Paul Morland, a very good demographer, has been on my show before and has said the link between family size and housing affordability is not exactly one-to-one, because there are, areas in the northwest of England where housing is cheaper, but among the native population, the birth rate is still lower than new migrants. But you can see in the areas where immigration is the highest, and therefore immigrant birth rates are even higher, that can also map as a kind of social housing heat map. Like, there's not that much immigrant-occupied social housing in Devonshire, for example. So
hopefully, yeah.
if you withdraw NHS access, benefits and social housing from foreign nationals and make it much harder to get British citizenship or indefinite leave to remain in the first place, you might have that arms race improve. But the fact that we're in an arms race at all speaks to the level of betrayal.
Is a complete betrayal of the people of this country, our ancestors, our descendants, and as one wise man said quite recently, was done entirely on purpose. It was not an accident. And this, of course, was taken from information that people like you, Connor, were reporting on all the way back in November, using these graphs. The information was taken from the ONS website and then put into these graphs. So here is a breakdown. So you can see that other white is still 11%. So overall, the white population of Britain in terms of births is about 67%. But still, this is Britain, this is England. I would prefer for it to remain that rather than just an economic zone for even people from the rest of Europe to come to.
Other white includes Albania. Just
yeah.
for a heads up.
That's something else. And even then, other white, which you would imagine is European people, is still dwarfed by Asian births in this country. And we can also see from some of the other information that you found in the Daily Mail article, live births for the 10 most common countries of birth for non-UK born mothers in England and Wales. India, 21,000. Pakistan, you've got Afghanistan, and this was, I think, the first year that Afghanistan entered into these figures because of the refugee scheme following the pullout of our forces and the Taliban takeover there
as well. So on my show later, I'm going through again the indefinite leave to remain rules. It turns out that indefinite leave to remain is only meant to be granted after 5 years of being in Britain. That's when you can apply. They automatically granted indefinite leave to remain to every recipient of an Afghan humanitarian visa. So they don't even need to wait. We're just stuck with them forever.
Oh, brilliant. And as you point out in this as well, 31.8% of births, almost a full third, were to non-UK born mothers. And with all of the migration coming into this country as well, this will continue to get worse and worse because these figures could remain perfectly static, and even with closed borders, we would still find ourselves being outnumbered. This will only accelerate going into the future. Callum pointed out that we need to decolonise London. I absolutely agree.
Nice screenshot.
It is a nice screenshot, but you've got to zoom in nice and close for this. But, of course, if you want to see what will become of England and the rest of Britain, if these kinds of figures are to be are to continue at the rate that they are, just look at parts of London. Or, as I will do later on in the segment, look at South Africa. But first, there is some very, very astroturfed-looking posts going about on social media from fellows like this Toby Foster, who managed to get almost 1 million views and 12,000 likes on this. So actually there's nothing wrong with London, just got back from there. No one tried to nick my watch because that's the sign of a quality city. If that's the bar that you're going with, that's a very low bar. Nobody tried to mug me this time. No one mugged me. Everyone in the shop spoke English, and most people smiled at me. That
is the baseline standard of all of England at one point.
But also London. Okay, where? Which
part of London?
Richmond, Harrow. Did you go to Bexley possibly? Because those are the more
Kensington, Chelsea,
Brixton.
No. Also, just because you didn't get mugged this one time does not contradict the fact that there is a rape reported every hour.
It's a failure to understand per capita.
I, alongside other people, responded to this. Maven responded to this saying that the last time he was in London about 2 weeks ago, he was in a cab, and while they were waiting at a zebra crossing, he literally just saw a woman crossing the road, and a guy ran up and nicked her bag. Lovely. And when I was in Brixton a few years ago, I responded saying that I went to a corner shop after a gig, and while I was in there, it ended up being robbed by a gang of tiny drill rappers.
Little pocket drill rappers.
Yeah, little pocket drill rappers.
They held him down like it was Gulliver's Travels.
Yeah, and it was being flanked on the outside by an elder drill rapper. He was about 18. They don't get much older than that.
Elder drill rapper.
Yeah,
it sounds like a video game boss variant.
He had a great big grey beard out from under his balaclava.
Yeah, and he was staring at me as if to say, "You try anything, I'll stab you." So you know what? I chose to not get stabbed. So that's other people's experience of London, but this one data point here, this anecdote, got 12,000 likes and is basically a little bit of nice AstroTurf propaganda to remind everybody that there's nothing wrong with diversity. London is fine.
It doesn't even need to be criminal to be unpleasant. Like, it's just walking through the dystopic tunnels of the Elizabeth line, having someone in a heavy subcontinental or African accent shout the train announcements at you, with British Transport Police staff walking towards you, again, in the full face coverings, indoors, so it's not that they've even got the wind buffeting down on them, having second generation diversity burst through the barriers as you're paying exorbitant amounts in order to get to work on time so that you can pay for their social housing. Just all these small things like that really start to grate on you as a Londoner.
Almost makes you feel as if society is built against you at this point, doesn't it? But that would be systematic oppression, which only happens to non-white people. Anyway, this will, of course, as I mentioned, keep getting worse with the way that things are going, because if you believe that the Palestinians, when they are inevitably pushed out of Gaza are going to be going entirely to Jordan and Egypt and other parts of the Middle East. You are wrong, because we've already got an example here of a Palestinian family allowed to remain in the UK after applying through the Ukrainian refugee scheme.
Before the election, they had a debate about this in Parliament, where members of then every party, there was one Conservative that ended up defecting to Labour, but Labour, SNP, Greens, Lib Dems, etc., came along and said, we should recreate the Ukrainian refugee scheme for Gaza.
Fantastic.
So the Labour immigration minister at the time said, we've already got this drafted. Now, they don't even need to pass it, it turns out, because even if the Home Office oppose it and Labour haven't put the legislation forward, judicial activists can just sign it off and stick families of 6 in our country.
Judges, as happened in this case, can just say, oh, well, it's for humanitarian reasons. And
European Court on Human Rights?
It was using Article 8 of the European Convention for Human Rights, which protects the right to family life, because it was a mother, father, and 4 children. So that's 6 new entries.
Gaza's just right next to Latvia, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
What we need, I feel, as a country is a people that have had a direct hand, home brewing explosives and making armaments. That's what I find really enriches our society.
I think you've got to remember how it works, Josh, is that while they're in Gaza, they're dangerous terrorists and they harbour Hamas. When they cross onto European soil, they're sympathetic victims and displaced persons.
They are indeed as British as you and me. I forgot. Suddenly, the scales of 75% of people in the Gaza Strip last year registering to Pew Research having supported Hamas just fall from their eyes. And they won't blame the British at all for setting up Israel. There'll be no civilizational baggage there strapped to a bomb at all.
It's amazing the power of that magic soil. We should bag it up and sell it. We could fix the whole world, couldn't we?
If the soil itself is magic, we could dig a load up, gift it to those countries, and then they'd be just as successful as us once they've put it on the ground, right?
That's the liberal promise, isn't it?
Yeah. So the judge explained it by saying that the evidence shows the security and humanitarian situation in Gaza remains exceptionally dangerous and dire, and highlighted that the youngest children might die if they was to remain there, and that it's overwhelmingly in their best interest to be in a safe or safer environment together with their parents and siblings. That safe and safer environment just happens to be England.
Yeah, I agree.
It can't be anywhere around Israel that should be accepting these people if they're so desperate to support.
When all of those countries, pleading their support of Palestine, but when it comes to actually taking the Palestinians, they're against it. It's almost like those lefty activists that were holding the refugee welcome signs, but when asked, would you take one right now? They go, no.
Well, I agree. We should keep children safe and with their parents, which is why we shouldn't use the asylum system to, import child murderers like Axel Ruder Cabana or, potential Hamas terrorists, for example.
Well, at least we can be assured, because the judge has the judge and the Home Office have said that this case is only very specific and doesn't set precedent for other potential applicants for the same process.
It doesn't. Oh, okay.
That's how the law works.
Yeah, I think that's how it works, right?
Precedent's not set by prior decisions. No.
That's not how it works.
Don't lie to me.
That's just a lie. That's just a lie. And there is only one MP that I've seen speaking about this. Of course, it was Rupert Lowe.
King.
Saying that they shouldn't be welcomed into the UK. No ifs, buts. It simply can't be allowed to happen. Because obviously it's a stupid idea. If, again, the rhetoric and the standard is that when they are in Gaza, they are evil terrorists, how does that change by a short boat trip or a plane ride over here?
Credit to Rob Jenrick as well. He has been tweeting about this. And Suella Braverman.
I've missed those two.
Both of them, again, it's because they have Jewish family members, so they're particularly concerned about this. But everyone should be concerned about this, because even if you're as indifferent to we are about Israel, because we've never been and are not Jewish, Hamas also hate every single British person for being at least latently Christian, or because their ancestors were involved in setting up Israel. So a target is on all of us with this.
Yeah, and again, that's just why if things carry on with the kind of refugee, asylum, and immigration policies that we have at the moment, things will get worse. But I think it's important to say, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, what happens when we do become a minority, right? Because Britain, when we had an empire, ruled as a minority over our colonial states. We had, maybe 15 to 20,000 people in India that ran most of the country, and it ran very, very well. It was a much better country then than it is now, frankly. What happens when we are no longer in charge and other people who hate us are in charge? Well, we become South Africanized. South Africanization will begin to happen, and if this begins to happen elsewhere in the West, we will eventually end up with what I call global South Africa.
I think I would argue that it's already started happening.
Oh,
I
it
mean, the
certainly
visual
has in
signs
some
of
parts
decline, yeah.
And happily, I found, thanks to Josh, that there is an account called Josie versus Josie, dedicated to tracking the decline of Johannesburg, and it just contrasts images. So this first one, that's 2010, skip ahead, 2023. So at first these just become, it's a visual sign of decay, but one after the other it begins to accumulate, and you can see that the sorts of people who may end up being a majority of this country are not going to look after the country. It will not be the same country with these kinds of people in charge. So on the left, 2009 to 2023, you can see how rapidly it goes. And it wasn't even amazing to begin with, but you see basic standards thrown away.
Is that a Mad Max, wheel worship altar?
Yeah.
You've actually got the architecture of the post-apocalypse.
It must also be said that outside of even the cultural, safety, any considerations like that, on a purely aesthetic level, if you have eyes, you're going to put up with this
Well, we already
for the
do.
rest of your life. So here's a simple one. This is 2009 versus 2024. You can see that there is a semblance of a road traffic system. There is a traffic light, there's road markings, you've got a street light system. Next one, oh God, sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. Now, you kind of still got street markings, little bit.
You just have to chance it.
Little bit. And see how quickly it happens as well. See how quickly it happens. So 2009 versus 2023 looks like not a very nice city, but functional. Oh, it's a shithole.
It's like if you remove the Europeans, it just defaults back to Africa again. That's what happened.
I know, right?
And that's what has happened.
Yeah, and if you also import lots and lots of Africans who are used to living on the right and see nothing wrong with it, because there's no such thing as a public space that you treat politely, we're starting to look like that one on the right by moving that population here.
I'm pretty sure that looks like Swindon. Yeah.
Yep.
It does actually, yeah.
Here's another one, 2015 versus 2022. So we see the time scale for the decline is becoming more rapid. So this is only a difference of 7 years. Again, not the best looking street in the world, but
it's a lot better than that.
Open sewage on the ground. Rubbish,
imagine that business
trash,
isn't functioning anymore.
everywhere. And here is the best one that I saw shared by Callum, who sums it up perfectly. And let me ask you the question before I show you. What is it that you think South Africa had before it had dirt roads?
Paved roads.
Yes. 2017 versus 2023.
Oh, is this when they go...
6 years.
Is this, it's either flooded, or is this when they go around just randomly breaking up the tarmac with pickaxes and selling it off? Because I have seen those videos before. Right, yeah. Do you know what's pretty weird as well when we reviewed Black Panther? Is that the futuristic utopia envisioned by Africans for Africans had mud huts on the side of the palace, but also dirt roads.
Yeah.
Why
Very
can you develop spaceships and invincible armor but not tarmac?
even the utopia envisioned in Africa is still horrible to my eyes, if I'm honest. If that's how they want to live, that's their preferred way to live. If this is how South Africa is now. I don't want England to be South Africa. I don't want global South Africa. I want individual nation states to be able to determine themselves and to be able to run themselves how they want to the preferences of the people. Our governments have been betraying us for years and replacing the people for draconian reasons, and so that they can turn us all into South Africa, because of course South Africa was a functioning country in Africa. You're not allowed to have that because it's racist. Obviously South Africa had its own problems, but still the decline is real. Rhodesia, functioning country in Africa, not allowed to have that because it's racist. So you have to destroy it.
It went from the highest living standards in all of Africa in the early 60s to having a famine which killed 1 million people.
Well, the reason they're doing this is for the GDP, right? So I'm assuming South Africa's GDP, with all the people originally being there, is phenomenal?
No. No. Shockingly enough, when they're destroying paved roads to make them dirt roads again, the economic benefits are hard to discern. But how will they treat us outside of just the aesthetic and infrastructure problems that global South Africanization will cause? How will they treat us, the despised minorities in these new frontiers? Well, they hate us and they will steal our things. This has been reported on by Josh recently, but there is the new South... Yep.
Carrying the box on the head. We've now seen this in random towns.
I've seen it in the flesh, walking home from work.
I've seen care workers do it.
Yep.
Just like an African woman with a bag of rice on her head.
Just carry it like that. What?
I was thinking as well, she had 2 hands free, and it's like a heavy multi-kilogram bag.
One of them must have been holding the speakerphone.
That's true. She was talking very loudly in African to her phone. Sorry.
Yeah, so this is the South African expropriation bill, which allows land seizures by the state without compensation. But don't worry, guys, don't worry. There was a clause in it that means it's only in circumstances where it's just an equitable and in the public interest to do so.
So to whites.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sad to say that you, the hated white minority, will not be in charge of what is in the public interest and what is considered equitable, and so they will just decide, well, it's just for us to do this. So we're stealing your stuff without giving you anything in return for it. So thank you very much for that. We're basically seeing that at the moment in the UK, in Britain, with the inheritance tax, because if there's one thing socialists really hate, it's farmers. Thankfully, there is one regime trying to stand up to this at the moment, which is Trump, because of course it is, because he has signed an executive order over the weekend which has frozen aid to South Africa and saying the US cannot support the government of South Africa's commission of rights violation in its country. It also said as long as South Africa continues these unjust and immoral practices, the US will not provide aid or assistance. The White House has also said that Washington is trying to formulate a plan to resettle South African farmers and their families as refugees.
This is because of Elon Musk, of course.
I would like to point out this picture is uniquely beautiful for Africa. It almost looks like Europe. It's funny that, isn't it?
It is funny that. And of course, in response to all of this, as with the farmers' protests in Britain, we have AstroTurf accounts showing up to say, actually, white people owning farms in a country that they established before the Bantus even arrived there was racist, so this is long overdue. Taking back land from white colonizers, they were settlers, you retard, should be a given. It's justice, not discrimination. And then you get random South Africans of backgrounds that I won't mention, saying that no white person is indigenous to Africa. White South Africans like myself, hello there, and like Callie Creel of AfriForum all come to Africa from other parts of the world. Africa belongs to Africans, except when that's applied to Europe, then we're an open economic zone that's open to everybody. You can be European as long as you step foot here. So what is the solution to global South Africa? There is only one solution as it exists in England right now, because we cannot get into a demographics arms race with birth rates with these people. They will, due to their nature, always outbreed us, and so there is only one solution, which is remigration.
Hi folks, thanks for watching. If you would like more from us, you'd like to support us, help us keep the lights on, because of course we're still demonetized on this channel, go over to lotus.com and sign up for only £5 a month and watch Bo's unbelievably detailed series on the fall of the Roman Republic. Now, you can easily find an hour-long video which will tell you the broad strokes of what happened with the triumvirate and the civil war and the death of Pompey and how Caesar gets stabbed, etc., etc. But Bo has done something in the order of about 20 hours of content going into the most minute details on this. Now, I appreciate that's not everyone's cup of tea, but there's a huge amount in there you will not be aware of, and I personally have been really enjoying it. So come and support us, sign up, and watch the best stuff that we have. Also, go and follow us on ludseaters_com on X, and we'll see you next time.